For Sunday, March 12th, you've found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, a school fight at the state capitol. Emory digs a little bit of an opening into the city of Atlanta. In Atlanta, a mayor's poll, which has some somewhat surprising results. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're so glad you'll be with us on this Sunday. The General Assembly is in session. We've got this false early spring where all the Bradford pears and everybody else in the plant world are confused. But we're not confused. We're not confused. We're okay. We're going to address the issues of the day despite the early flowering of our natural resources. Oh, and by the way, the azaleas are confused, and they're not going to be there for the Masters.
No, they've been blooming in Augusta now, but it won't be good for the first week in April.
There's this thing that's called global warming that you all deny exists.
And you have the scientific evidence, Doctor. Okay.
Okay.
The fact that the azaleas are blooming
bloom in February, right, and March.
Develop new forms of azaleas. All right. It's interesting to me anyway. Phil and I have a slight disagreement about this. I think this is a very boring session of the Georgia General Assembly. Phil thinks there's a lot of activity, but most of it's behind the scenes. I'll give you that. There are some issues, however, that are coming to the surface, and one of them is this business with failing schools that Governor Deal has so far whiffed on. His constitutional amendment was defeated in November. There was talk of Plan B. It is out there now, and now the governor finds himself in a dispute with the elected state school superintendent, Richard Woods, over who gets to be in charge of failed schools and turning them around. I have some strong feelings about this, but Jeff, I'll let you address the question. Should the governor or the elected state education superintendent be in charge of that?
The elected governor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I agree with you, as we have for probably decades now, that there ought not to be an elected state school superintendent. There ought to be an appointed school superintendent. The governor is the chief executive officer of the state of Georgia. Education is the bulk of the state budget.
It is.
And ultimately, it should be the governor who's in charge of it. If I was governor of the state of Georgia, I would want to have a tremendous amount of sway over education. But we just saw how the voters rejected what the governor had in mind with his Opportunity School District. And this seems to be sort of a watered down version of the same, where you're inserting essentially an appointed superintendent.
Called a chief turnaround officer.
Exactly right. Right next to the elected superintendent. And so I can see why Richard would have some problems with that.
Yeah, Phil, do you support the elected school superintendent?
No, I actually agree with both of you.
Okay.
But we've got to work with what we have, and
That's
obviously
true.
he is an elected official. They say now he should be in a consulting role, which is good, but we just have to move forward. And I think Representative Brooks Coleman is one of the most hardest working people down there who's trying to cobble this all together. And the governor,
he's an educator.
He's an educator,
Well, so is
and the governor's working it.
The superintendent is an educator also.
Well, that's right.
So,
I hope they can come to a compromise, Alexis.
well, I hope they can too, but the problem really is back in the classroom, back at the local level. And they need to come up with ways to improve education that way. And I think the more bureaucracy you put on top of it, the more it bogs it down.
But the local school boards aren't doing it in all too many cases. I was just looking at Richmond County.
The main culprit is poverty.
Well, that's not the whole cause. A lot of it is just bureaucracy at the local level that's not working properly. And that's why you need some oversight.
Well, and for sake of argument, we'll get off this. It's interesting how the Democrats have adopted your positions, which is that poverty is responsible for everything. All we got to do is just pour money into the families now. It used to be the schools.
Oh,
now we're going to pour money
position
into
at
the
all.
families.
That's not
we're going to
my
have
position.
cradle-to-grave services for children, and we'll fix education.
No, that's not my
Republicans
position
are
at all.
saying, let's spend less money or the same amount of money and get better results. But that's what they're debating down at the Capitol. Now, one other little snippet at the Capitol this week. The House Speaker, David Ralston, met with the Atlanta Press Club and left open the door to running for governor. He has not been in the discussion prior to this, in my mind anyway, and yet the Speaker's a powerful man. Why shouldn't he run for governor?
Well, you know, wherever there's a vacuum, something is going to fill it. And we've talked on the show before that Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle is probably the presumed front runner right now. It's still early for the governor's race. But David Ralston has floated this very serious trial balloon, and that was the scuttlebutt when I was at the Capitol this last week. And I'm sure, obviously, the Lieutenant Governor is not happy to hear this, but if some outsider like a David Perdue that can be well funded is going to run for governor, he better come out now. We all know timing in politics. So I think this is a serious bid. I think that Speaker Ralston has got a lot of friends around the state. You know, he ran statewide back in 1998 for Attorney General. And I think he's putting his feet in the water and is going to see what happens.
All right, in the meantime, back to the business of governing. Governor Deal, he says he's got an open mind on this campus carry bill, the idea of guns on college campuses, but he's really, if you listen to him carefully, he's going to continue to use his veto on that bill, even if they amend it.
I don't know, and I'm going to be the sunny optimist here today on Sunday.
Actually, about what?
Actually, the good news is he has been talking with the campus carry authors of the legislation, and they have met some of his demands. You know, he did not want guns to be in dorms. Well, they weren't in dorms anyway. He didn't want guns to be in the child care centers. 90% of these child care centers are in the dorms. I think we might get a surprise, Dick, and he might support this legislation. It's better legislation this year.
If it's amended.
Well, it has been amended.
Yeah, but I mean, even he wants more.
Well, I think we have given him. I say we because I'm a big supporter of campus carry, but I think he's getting what he wanted.
And the reason you're a supporter of campus carry is what?
Is to save some lives, especially in these urban campuses where these kids are sitting ducks in gun-free zones.
And so you're going to shoot somebody to save some lives?
You know, if a 21-year-old who has a carry license, who perhaps has been a Afghan a veteran or an Iraqi veteran who knows what he's doing and trained, yes.
Well, Second Amendment is the way I look at it, and so I'm for it too, but gently for it. I don't think I have the same fervor you do.
I don't believe that the campus presidents
Before we get out of
for
this,
it.
there are two tax things that the General Assembly is doing that are interesting. I don't know what's right or wrong. One is a tax on sales over the internet, and which I actually thought they'd never get around to, but I guess the revenue hole is such they've got to step in. At least they feel they do. So there is a bill to. If you do more than $250,000 in sales on the internet, you are subject to filing and paying the taxes. Currently, we're supposed to pay taxes on what we buy on the internet. To my knowledge, I never have. I don't know. I've never
You don't
looked
shop
at
at
it.
Amazon?
Amazon does.
Amazon
charge.
pays, that's right.
Yeah.
And then the other one that was interesting is the sales of cars, used cars. Do you pay the book value or do you pay the sale price? And there's a whole lot of money tied up in that. I was surprised that could be a big hit to taxpayers if they make the tax on the
Sales price.
sale price.
Yes.
That could be a real, but $200 million a year or something like that.
But isn't that what you pay if you buy it new? You
Yeah, I
pay
guess.
the taxes on what you pay
Well,
for
the
the
used car dealers like the lower rate.
Right.
The new car dealers like the higher rate. I don't know who's right.
Right. Can I squeeze in one more real quick?
Yes.
Since you talk about tax, as you know, I've been watching this fantasy sports legislation and the attempt to tax it. It's a giant revenue producer for the state. I haven't seen the final version, I have to say that quickly, but from what I've read so far, they're trying to change some definitions and get around the traditional gaming stipulation. As we know, only the gambling is allowed through the lottery because of the Constitution.
Well, they're saying it's a game of skill.
That's exactly right, and that's the big debate. Now, they don't want the money to go to Hope or pre-K.
Where do they want it to go?
Well, they just say it's a tax, and it's pretty vague, so I will report back next week. We've got to watch this one.
Just in
Well,
the general fund.
All right, we got to get out there. Something we didn't get to. I really like the bill. My colleagues aren't interested in it, but I like the one that says you can roll through a stop sign at less than 5 miles an hour.
I'm in
Cops
favor
call
of
it a
that.
California rule.
California rule.
I'm in
That's
favor
right.
of that.
That's right.
That's right.
And so Ed
Everyone's got a
Setzler
taste for
from
doing
Stop
that.
shooting.
So State Rep Ed Setzler from Ackworth, good for him.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, there's a little something down at the state capitol called Medicaid. That's not being discussed, is it?
Not at all.
Nope. All right, when we return, let's look at the camel's nose in the tent of the city of Atlanta. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Last year, there was innocent speculation about how Emory University and the CDC might become part of the city of Atlanta. And there were vague references, including on this broadcast, to the fact that how can Emory do that because they're not contiguous to the city of Atlanta?
Yes, they are.
Well, we discussed whether they were or whether they weren't. Well, now they are.
There they are.
No, they are.
So, were you the real estate broker on this
I
one?
was not the
Explain
real
this
estate
pretty cool
broker
deal.
on it, and, well, it is a pretty cool deal, and it's not new. And this probably happened a year ago or so when they very quietly bought a residence that is contiguous to the campus, and the residence and its yard is contiguous to the city of Atlanta. And this gets us through that little technicality in state law that allows them to be annexed into the city of Atlanta. But just a little story. You know, back years ago, there was a little community out in Michigan called East Detroit, and because of all the negative news, they wanted to change their name, and they did. And here you have this.
Did they change it to East Chicago?
And here you have Emory University and its great reputation, and the Centers for Disease Control, and probably a good number of neighborhoods nearby wanting to be a part of this very successful city.
Well,
Reverse interest.
I've argued, and you've heard me, that I look at this as Kasim Reed's chance to have kind of a crown jewel. Just as Bill Hartsfield back in the 50s brought Buckhead into the city, Kasim Reed could be the guy who brought Emory, the CDC, and Druid Hills into the city of Atlanta.
You know, I think that it might be, first of all, I don't think that Kasim Reed is driving this train. I think Emory University is, and for a number of reasons, probably the top of them being transit. And
I think you're right.
And
I
wanting
think we all
to
agree.
create and
That
get
corridor.
that corridor,
Yeah.
exactly right. It's very important. Tried in 2012, didn't get it. Now there's another opportunity through recent efforts that Kasim Reed championed. But I think that this is more them. But what he has done is created a successful city, right?
Yeah.
With
Where they
with
do want to
a
be
large amount of reserves, where a lot of people want to move in, where it's very expensive right now to live, and it's very trendy, and they want to be a part of that success.
And look at the flip side. Here is Emory stuck in DeKalb County, where just 2 weeks ago, the commission voted for a budget that is $93 million in the red. So if you're an Emory University, you're saying, wait a minute, this ship over here is going into the new year $93 million in the red and spending its reserves, and this ship over here is attracting jobs and every other thing you want.
Well, there's a couple of things wrong with that narrative. First, the $93 million figure, as you know, there's a $25 million discrepancy in early spending in the year, but you end up with a $60 million surplus, just like last year they ended up with a $58 million surplus in DeKalb County. And the other thing that's wrong with the narrative is that Emory University...
That's the DeKalb we both live in.
That's the same one.
Yeah.
And as you know, even with this annexation,
They're
Emory
still being
University
DeKalb.
will remain in DeKalb County.
Well, you know,
so it's not that they're
and you're
stuck in
right.
DeKalb.
And you're right.
They are part of DeKalb.
And that sets up a whole new set of complications for further discussion, by the way.
Right, but also I just add to that DeKalb does that budgeting, forecasting routinely because they know that the revenues are going to come in at some point before the end of the year. So it's not, they set it up as a deficit,
All right,
but
now
it doesn't end up that way.
Let's touch on the Atlanta City scandal, the City Hall bribery scandal. Nothing new this week, really, except it did occur to me when I was reading about the overpricing of the contractors, how they inflated the cost of things like salt and rock and gravel to sell to the city of Atlanta on an emergency contract. I thought, Jeff, you and I, we could incorporate
Stop.
and we could go to Hall County and buy salt real cheap. Understand, it's real cheap up there. And then we just wait till the weather turns, just watch Joanne Feldman on Fox 5, and then go down to City Hall and sell that rock at that salt for about 5 times what we paid for it.
You know, I
and
think
you could be my minority partner. In Atlanta, I could be your minority partner.
Oh boy.
What do you think?
First of all, in Hall County, you probably wouldn't need a minority partner. So
No, but it
let's
wouldn't
just
Atlanta.
dispose of that. And I think that there has been so
I would
much
be the
light
minority
shined on
partner.
that. I think that there are people in City Hall who are outraged, chief among them the mayor of the city of Atlanta, that would be going on, and that the city would be
He
ripped
should have
off
been
to
on the
that
job
degree.
and not let it go on.
Well,
I
wait a
can't believe
minute.
you're letting him slide on that one.
When you're chief executive of an organization this large and complex, you may not know every contract coming
He and
through there,
Adam
especially
Smith, the
when there
procurement
are
officer,
thousands
were
of
like this.
contracts.
He was, Jeff, and you know this, he and the procurement officer were close.
Let's change the subject
Well,
very
that's why
quickly to
he's
Cobb
gone.
County. I thought an interesting thing came out of the mouth of Mike Plant, the Braves point man on the move to Cobb County, when he said the Braves might be overparked. We have double. I thought that was kind of cool. We might be
Well, that
overparked
remains to be seen.
because they have double the number of parking places they had at Turner Field.
Right.
And more access points, as we've discussed.
Right.
But they had a big tour, a media tour of the new SunTrust Field.
Right.
I wasn't invited. I guess they don't care about
They don't
Doraville
care
and
about Georgia
Brookhaven, huh?
Gang anymore. But
You
the
didn't get
other-
invited?
I didn't get invited. But the other thing is,
Well, I have
they
to
don't
defend
have
that they've been
as many.
inviting
They don't have
us
any MARTA buses
periodically.
though. They don't have any MARTA buses.
There's one.
Yeah, but I'm saying that was the whole way people got around to Turner Field was a series of MARTA buses and routes
I
through
don't think a
downtown.
whole lot
Well,
of
they've
people
got,
did.
as you
A lot of
know,
people did,
Alexis,
yes.
when we've been out there, they have the transponder. Now, the key is, can you
It's-
get to the access points?
Right,
Yeah, there you go.
exactly. There's
All right, we
still
laid it
just
out.
two ways to get to those 14 points. Right?
When we come back, a lot more politics besides David Ralston. We'll look at the mayor's race in Atlanta and that hotly contested 6th District congressional race on the north side of town. We'll be right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
In Washington, D.C., the debate over the replacement for Obamacare has taken all the oxygen out of the nation's capital,
Pretty much.
even overwhelming the president's tweets. I mean, really, it's been a one-issue town for about a week, but in the middle of all that, Governor Sonny Perdue, former governor of Georgia, Sonny Perdue, his nomination to be Secretary of Agriculture is stalled, and it looks like the long knives are out for him because the New York Times did one of their typical hit pieces on him because, oh my gosh, he was a businessman.
Well, the Republican majority of the Senate isn't going to pay any attention to the New York Times, and I just saw on Friday that the week of March 20th, that's when they're going to be holding the
Hearing.
Purdue hearings, and it should be okay.
Okay.
I think it's going to be fun.
Now, in the Atlanta mayor's race, we've obtained a poll that was interesting just because I'm hungry for news on this issue. But
It was SDR Consulting. who did the
SDR Consulting
poll.
did the poll. Mary Norwood has a huge lead. Now, the fact that she's leading did not surprise me. The size of her lead did surprise me. And the second place finisher in that poll is Councilwoman Keisha Lance Bottoms at 11%. Some of the bigger names are all clumped at the bottom at 2 and 3%. I wonder what all this means.
Well, as we know, it's a little early.
It is early.
And I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think we all would agree that Mary Norwood, I think it was 62% of the respondents viewed her favorably. That's not surprising. It's great for Mary Norwood.
But it's won
Keisha
twice
Lance-
as much as anyone else.
Well, it's twice as much. And Keisha Lance Bottoms, I think that's fascinating, Jeff. And then it was Kwanzaa Hall and Caesar Mitchell that were right under that. But things can change.
It's still very early. You know, the numbers were really unpredictable this time 8 years ago. And Mary Norwood, because she was in that race 8 years ago, has got tremendous name recognition. She's known all over
I
the
think
city.
that's the
And so
point.
I think that's what we're looking at right now. And as
and
people
still
get to know
well
the candidates
liked.
a
And
little
still
better.
well liked.
And she continues to employ the neighborhood planning unit strategy that was created by Maynard Jackson to a great effect. She continues to have events throughout the city that she has.
Well, you never know about the public memory. You know, that was 8 years ago.
Yeah, but what this really means is that you don't need a large plurality to get into a runoff in November.
You're not kidding.
Well, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And I was a little surprised Vincent Fort did not register. I'm still saying he might be the sleeper candidate to watch out for to get in that slot you're talking about.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
he mobilizes the Bernie Sanders people and all
Yeah.
that. I saw him at a rally this week, and it was interesting. It was a sorry rally. About 50 people showed up to castigate Donald Trump. One of the signs was really powerful. They were holding it up with pride. Trump lacks empathy.
What a joke.
Really? You're going to go out and march? Because
Yeah,
Trump...
it would have been so much better if it said intelligence.
And then I was hoping you'd go on a rant this week. Because there was another sign at that rally. And it said, "Stay woke."
Yes, that's what
That's
the
from
young folks say.
someone went to a public school.
No.
No.
Alexis, do you know what it is?
No, you tell me.
I went on Urban Dictionary and looked it up.
And what did it say, Dick?
And Stay Woke says that when Jeff goes off on a rant that is immaterial to the question at hand, I get to say, "Stay woke."
I don't understand it like that.
Well, and the other meaning of it is
Vigilant.
It's vigilance because of Ferguson, Missouri.
Right.
So you're supposed to look out for all those nasty policemen with guns behind you. Stay woke. All right, the 6th Congressional District.
How stupid.
It's not stupid.
Isn't it perfect for Jeff? Stay
no,
woke.
but
I'm with
it's
You use it first, or I'll use it.
No,
Okay.
that would have been a good Trump song.
Okay.
How stupid.
All right, the 6th Congressional District is a real political campaign. You've got the Republicans attacking John Ossoff, the Democratic frontrunner, with commercials of his college days. By the way, he was in the same singing group at college that I was. I know that room. It's amazing. But he was a college kid, so I think the commercial has no effect. His own commercials, I think, are less effective because he's so young. What do you think about that?
Well, that's why I like them, because he's so young and he's being so grown up. But he also has come back with playing with the Han Solo factor and talking about fighting the empire of Donald Trump.
Well,
So-
I think if I was a strategist, I would say go to the center. He's still emphasizing John Lewis, and I don't see where that's going to give him traction. If he had a more independent streak, that might help him in that district.
Well, I don't know that he necessarily needs you as a campaign manager. He's in second place, is my understanding, up there in that polling there.
We should mention behind Karen Handel.
Karen Handel,
Right.
and that is a very
And the
strong
third
position
place
for a
finisher.
Democrat
You
who worked for
you wait
John
the-
Lewis
you
to
wait-
be in.
You wait for the final tally in the runoff.
And the 3rd place finisher in that poll, now they're way low numbers, just like the mayor's race. It's still early there. But you have Karen Handel with a lead over John Ossoff, the leading Democrat. And right there is a heretofore obscure figure, Bob Grant, a city councilman in Johns Creek, who is running a very effective campaign.
He's got a great television ad campaign in his
He's
name
pro-Trump.
recognition. He's pro-Trump, but the other Trump candidate, Bruce Lavelle, your Dunwoody jeweler friend, is saying that he was a never-Trumper and has exposed him as a liar. He was for Marco Rubio, which was a sin in that
In
campaign.
the meantime, Judson Hill does it the old-fashioned way. He continues to pile up endorsements. He's got Newt Gingrich and others. Got Nancy Jester from DeKalb County Commission. And so he's there, but in that one early poll, he wasn't there.
Right.
And then Dan Moody, a real establishment guy who was in the state senate and very respected. You've got a flyer from Dan. I'm sure you got it where you live. And it doesn't say what party he's in.
It says he's a proven conservative, so I don't think the liberals will like that.
I don't know what the point of that
I
is.
was going to say, it's
You're
a
right, it's a
nonpartisan
special
race.
election. Okay. All right.
He does say that he's going to, be the silent type. I don't quite know if that's the right message in that
Right.
district
And
either.
who's the one with the elephant and the donkey? And
That's
the,
Dan Moody.
Yeah.
That's he? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that's effective?
I do not. I think it's funny.
Someone who
But you
occasionally...
remember
But
it.
I don't remember who it was. I just remember the commercial.
Well, that's not good.
That's
Okay.
not good.
All right, that race is going to be fun. It's just getting going. When we come back, we're going to bury the dead with winners and losers. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And don't forget us on Facebook. A pretty lively week on Facebook this week. And our own channel on YouTube where you can see the broadcast you missed. Jeffrey, winners and losers.
Well, my winner is going to be Fred Smith Sr., who has been an advocate and researcher to protect the remains of more than 30 slaves who were disinterred on the UGA campus in Athens. Fred Smith Sr. has been fighting to ensure that appropriate steps are taken and their contributions to UGA are properly recognized. And so hats off to Fred Smith Sr. for his work there in Athens, Georgia. My loser has got to be the mainstream media. We have a purveyor of fake news, in all caps, in the White House, and they're just buying into it left and right, that there are wiretaps in his office and the Trump Tower and all this stuff, and they spend the entire weekend talking about this fake news.
Then he changed the subject.
And he uses it very deftly to just shift the conversation
All right,
away from himself.
Go ahead,
so they're the
Alexis.
losers.
Okay, I'm going to salute the Atlanta Preservation Center for its Phoenix Flies celebration. It's an annual event that they do to highlight the architecture and landscapes around historic areas in the city. And it's included in this is a historic Southview Cemetery music tour. And that was founded in 1886 by formerly enslaved people here in Atlanta. And also I happen to be on the Historic Southview Preservation Board. But there's many interesting things all month long going on, so people should
Okay.
check it out.
So let's see, cemeteries from Jeff, cemeteries from Alexis.
All right,
Something on the living?
No,
You said
I will
something
say
about
that I will say this: Brooks Coleman, who we mentioned in the education segment, is doing a great job trying to do this education reform bill and help kids in failing schools. And Gwinnett County, speaking of education, they are getting more and more awards. One of the finest public school systems in the country. It's a model, and they just keep racking them up.
All right, we're wrapping up quickly. We're out of time. I don't think I have time to say anything, do I? Yeah. Well, look, Jill Chambers, who used to represent North DeKalb, she now works for a strip club in Doraville, where she's the artistic director.
Oh,
That's
my.
politics at its